Let's look at some of the bloopers that companies have managed to do, and then I'll ask related questions to that. This was Robin Gibb, worst campaign or worst message that anybody can post, and this was done by MSN. He died at the age of 62, and what did MSN do? They actually put a message out there to say, click like if you want to pay respect. For a person who died, you want to click like button to pay respect. I mean, that's just not done. Next one, please. This was a tragedy. Everybody heard of Hurricane Sandy that came in the East Coast last year in the US. And one of the apparel company, I think it was Kmart probably, or American Apparel, what did they do? They said, they ran a social media campaign saying that anyway you're going to sit in your houses for next 72 hours, 96 hours, you order something online and we'll make sure that it gets delivered for free. And there was a lot of backlash against those. I mean, you should not try to leverage any tragedies, any disasters like that to your advantage. That's a big no. And the next one is my most favorite blooper that Fortis Healthcare did. This was a breastfeeding week that was being celebrated, and guess the campaign that these guys ran. These guys ran a campaign saying that "Agar maa ka doodh piya hai to," and they ask people to actually complete the sentence. Multiple things wrong with this kind of campaign. Obviously, this was a tagline being used back in the 80s and 90s by the villains in a lot of Indian cinemas. And you just don't use a tagline hashtag like that, "Agar maa ka doodh piya hai to," for a breastfeeding week. It's something auspicious being celebrated, and you just don't go around and ask crowdsource this kind of taglines, hashtags. And the worst thing you can do, so there was a blooper, a lot of backlash against it, and the worst thing they could do is when there was a lot of backlash, guess what they did? They came up with the lamest excuse possible. They said our account was hacked and somebody actually did this, it was not us. I think that's the worst thing you as an individual or you as a corporate might want to do, all right? So these were some of the examples that have happened across the globe. I think there are many more. But then coming to, taking these bloopers into account, the question for you, Kiruba, is they are newcomers to social media. What if they made a mistake? Obviously, there is privacy issues, and this is the excuse, but it could actually happen from an identity theft perspective. So, what your views and advice would be in this regard?
On our 10th wedding anniversary, I wanted to surprise my wife. So 3 months before our anniversary date, I booked a ticket for two to Kuala Lumpur, and on the day of the anniversary, my wife has no idea. Now, she should have smelled a fish because in 10 years of marriage, never have I volunteered to take her to one place. But she had no clue. So we drive around, and as we go near the airport, I turn a right turn, go inside, and she's like, why are we going inside? So anyway, we check, we go to the counter, and she knows something is happening. So I give my boarding thing, and then the guy at the counter takes an inordinately long time to double check, And then he looks at my face, and then looks at again my face, and then calls the supervisor, and then both of them look at my face. And like, I think something's terribly wrong. And then finally this guy comes up, "Sir, your wife can travel, but you can't." And this is like, what, at 11 o'clock in the night, right? It's a late night flight. I try calling up Clear Trip from where I booked, no response, too late. And then finally he said, "Sir, I have one seat left. If you want, you can book." So I scurry along, and by the time it was just 1 hour to go, right? I scurry along, go book. I paid 3 times the rate, right? Because it's last minute, and I'm sitting in my flight, and I can't believe I spent 3 months masterminding this. Right? I'm sweating my hell out. I'm seething with anger, and I take my phone out and I tweet exactly this, right? I mean, trust Clear Trip to really screw up our honeymoon, and what a killjoy. I land up at, by the time we land up at the thing, I think I have good friends, there's about 400 shares or something, and because everybody wants to take out an anger against a brand, especially ganging up. It's so very common in brands. The interesting thing was, at that night, I get a call from Clear Trip, but they reach out and say that, "Sir, we understand you there's been a problem. We don't know what the problem is, but we keep seeing so many things about you on ClearTrip. But tomorrow morning, we'll try and figure things out. And then the next day, I get a call from the CEO of ClearTrip, right, saying that we understood what the problem was. Part of it is our goof up, but part of it is really also Jet Airways or Indian Airlines, the collaboration, they screwed up. But hey, you got the wrong end of the stick. We apologize. We will reimburse the fare that you paid, and also just to make sure, we've double checked your return trip and we've upgraded you to business class. And let me tell you guys, there was the only time in my life I flew business class. After that, I can never stand economy. Right? And after that, they go on to their blog and they write a detailed blog post, because I had written, I ripped apart ClearTrip on my blog about the entire incident, and they responded that, and the first sentence they say that Kiruba had blogged about his incident and on his anniversary with a link to my blog. And they say that, first we want to apologize, and here's what the problem, and here are the steps we have taken to make sure that nobody else ever goes through this problem again. Beautiful. And those guys get about some 600 shares and 600 likes, and NDTV, CNN, and Times Now come and cover the story. What? It's a beautiful way of how a brand turned around what was a complete and negative PR, whatever mini disaster, into their advantage. So brilliant.
I just have a different take from this. My take is never try to surprise your wife.
So there was a great example of how Blooper can be turned around. Do you want to cite the other side of the example that you were saying earlier?
Deepika Palika was a national squash champion. So there was a news story that she goes on, so she's traveling abroad in Rotterdam. She checks into a hotel, takes out her Axis Bank debit card. It's not a credit card, debit card with her hard-earned money in it, and gives the card. And then the hotel guys say that, hey, you know what, there's no cash in your account. And she's extremely embarrassed. There are people in and around her, and she says that there are people who made snide remarks about her, saying that, hey, you don't even have cash and you're traveling out, and what kind of a, so she felt personally very hurt. So she calls up Axis Bank, and she said, listen, this is just a technical fault, so don't worry about it. And then sometime later, the government of India awards her because she won the championship. So they give her a check. She deposits the check in Axis Bank, and then it gets returned. And then she's surprised, why is this returned? And said that no, something is incomplete. So they say that it's not drawn on our bank. Of course it is. And you read Axis Bank on the check, and then they give it back. Then they say, hey, apologies. Yes, we can encash the check. But both these incidents, I think it upset her. So she went to, what is the redressal forum? Consumer redressal forum, right? And here's where the masterstroke that Axis Bank does after that. Not many people really know about this, about her going to a thing, but they give out a press release saying that Deepika Palika, a national squash champion, who has won international tournaments, does not have the mental strength to bear small disturbances like these. Right? And after that, right? So this is the equivalent of you taking a gun, cocking the trigger, pointing at your feet, bang, and shooting yourself. And all the newspapers picked up this news, right? And all they needed to do was to say, I'm sorry. Right? Of course it is their mistake. So they should have just, even if it wasn't their mistake, I think for brands the safest thing to do is to just say sorry and just try and kill the conversation as much as possible and not try to play correct out there, right?